All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really happy to have everybody here with us and to see that you're so eager to learn a little bit more about universities in Ireland and Northern Ireland. So I'm going to just kick things off. So my name is Maggie Cardosi. I represent University College Cork. I am the regional manager for North America, and I am based in Buffalo, New York. And I am joined by two other fabulous US-based representatives who I will let introduce themselves before we move on into our slideshow tonight.
Thanks, Maggie. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Jim Pierson. I'm the Senior Regional Manager with University College Dublin. I'm based in Chicago, and I've been with UCD for almost 11 years now. So very happy to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Maddie Reeves and I am the International Officer for North America with Queen's University Belfast. I have been with Queen's for just over a year now, and I'm based in Greater Cincinnati area. So very happy to be here as well and excited to share a bit more about studying in Ireland with you all.
Awesome. So, Fulcha, everybody, welcome again. We're so happy to have you here with us. And just a few housekeeping items before we move along, just to kind of let you know what we're going to talk about tonight. So, today we are going to, this presentation is intended as a general guide for students who are applying as international or non-EU applicants to universities in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. So, we're going to go over a lot of different general information around the application process, entry requirements, fees, student supports, campus life, academics, and much more. But just be aware that every university is going to have their own way of doing things and their own different policies. So please be sure to reference or contact each individual university if you have specific questions around those topics. But like I said, we're going to try to do a good job of giving you a good general overview of what to expect when it comes to academics, applications, and more on our campuses. Also, a couple housekeeping items. So we have a Q&A in place. So as we go along, feel free to put any questions into the chat. We'll be answering those either via text or we might save them to do live at the end. And just so you know, while we welcome applications from all different types of diploma programs and different qualifications, a lot of the information you're gonna see a lot of like GPA, US high school diploma, IB, but just if you are applying with A levels or you are from Canada or from any other country system, we're so happy to have you and we'd be happy to give you more specific information. So just let us know. But with that in mind, let's get things started. So the fact that you're here today lets us know that you're already thinking about going internationally and pursuing an academic adventure across the pond or outside of North America. But why might you want to look at Ireland specifically for your higher education needs? Ireland itself has a extremely vibrant and high quality of education. So our universities are ranked in the top 1 to 2% worldwide, which means that our learning system and our academics are internationally recognized, and our students do go all over the world with their degrees from Ireland and Northern Ireland. It's a small country. It's friendly. It's easy to navigate and easy to really find your place and find your community. But that doesn't mean that the quality of the campus life is going to be any less vibrant or multi-layered as what you might expect in the United States. So our universities have very unique campus environments and many different types of specific academic programs in very diverse university settings. So whether you want a kind of large public modern university feel, or maybe you want to be in a big city or a small town, or you want medieval type or Gothic type buildings or something in between, our universities have something to offer to you. As I mentioned, our degree programs are very highly ranked worldwide, and we also emphasize practical learning as part of the majority of our degree programs. So that means that your degree program will have some type of work placement or field work or internship or study abroad opportunity typically embedded into that program. And we also have, because of that emphasis on practical learning and also the really unique relationship that we have with a lot of multinational and nationally based businesses in Ireland. These businesses recognize how highly educated our students are, and therefore they're really sought after after graduation. So our employability rate within 6 months of graduation typically ranges from the mid to high 90s. So that's something really great, something that you can expect to potentially be able to take advantage of. Also, speaking of working after graduation, in the Republic of Ireland, you can remain in Ireland for up to 12 months after completing a bachelor's degree, or 24 months after completing a master's degree. And you can remain in Northern Ireland or the UK for 18 months after completing a bachelor's or a master's degree. And as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of different multinational companies and industries that have chosen to make Ireland their home. So there are over 1,000 of these different leading multinational companies who look for highly skilled, highly educated workforce. So that could potentially be you. And we have industries like ICT, gaming, pharmaceuticals, diagnostic companies, medical devices, financial services, and beyond, as well as a very thriving arts, creative arts community based in Ireland. These companies that we work with are often present on our campuses. They may have even helped us design some of our degree programs, and you may be able to work for these companies either in Ireland or potentially back over here on this side of the pond once you graduate. So when it comes to academics in Ireland, this is just a brief overview of what you can expect. So once again, as I mentioned earlier, every different university is going to have their own policies, but I think this is a good general guide for what to expect when you're looking at universities in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. So first off, this is a huge difference between Ireland and the United States. There are no general education requirements. So you can jump directly into your chosen subject. And these direct entry programs can encompass anything from archaeology to zoology and everything in between. If you are interested in something very specific, like say environmental science, you don't have to spend 2 years taking English and history and languages. You can dive right into that science-based degree program. So your degree is much more specialized after your 4-year program than it might be if you were to choose to stay home. And as I mentioned, our degree programs are internationally recognized, so you can go anywhere in the world after you graduate from an Irish university. We also offer a lot of professional programs at the undergraduate level, like law, medicine, veterinary medicine, dentistry, physiotherapy, and more. So, in which these programs would typically be considered postgraduate programs in North America. In Ireland, these are programs that you can enter into as an undergraduate and really streamline your education if those are areas that you're particularly interested in. And for the most part, there's a lot of support around these more clinical programs in terms of licensing and transferability back to the United States. I mentioned our degree programs are highly specialized. They tend to be either 3 or 4 years in length. And then if you want to stick around for a postgraduate program, the majority of our postgraduate programs are just 1 calendar year in length. So again, saving time and potentially saving money and resources as well. In general, what to expect from the academic community or the learning style across the island of Ireland. Not too different. Everything is taught through the medium of English, but it is a much more independent learning type experience. So the assessments, typically are not based off of continuous assessment. You may be in larger lecture halls, but also have smaller tutorials to offset that. It just depends on the university and the program that you've decided to study. But overall, you're looking at less busy work and a more kind of discipline focused program with really good opportunities for practical learning outside of the classroom.
Wonderful. Thanks, Maggie. So now we're going to jump into how to get into an Irish university, what the entry requirements are, what the application process is. And there's a lot here, and it's very different at each institution. And then Ireland is one beautiful island, but it has two different systems on it. So Maddie and I are going to ping pong back and forth to discuss what it looks like in general for Ireland or the Republic of Ireland, and Maddie will talk a bit more about Northern Ireland. So we'll start in Ireland, and we'll talk about general entry requirements and what are the distinctive parts of entry requirements when you're thinking about what's required to get into an Irish university is that it's very dependent on the course you're applying to, and almost every university will have different requirements for different majors or courses. So you'll have different requirements for, say, arts and humanities compared to science, compared to engineering, and each course at each university will have its own requirement. In very broad terms, something like a minimum 3.0 GPA is pretty standard as kind of the baseline entry requirements, though entry requirements can go up from there, into, 3.5, 3.7, kind of depending on the course that you're looking at. And it does depend on the program you're going into again. The rest of the materials that you'll need when applying will vary quite a bit by institution and by course. Some universities may require one or two letters of recommendation, and some might look for a personal statement, or if you're applying to a relevant course like architecture or an arts course, some kind of portfolio or proof of work that you've done before, but it does depend a bit on what you're applying to. I think generally most institutions in Ireland will be what we call test flexible, and that there are courses you can get into without needing any test scores at all. You can apply just with your high school GPA, whether you're an American or Canadian student, but there are many courses at institutions that will also require ACT, SAT, and or AP scores. So it does vary a little bit, and you should really reach out early to talk to institutions if you're thinking about going to Ireland to figure out what their requirements are for individual courses. I think the benefit of Irish admissions is that it is very transparent, and most institutions have entry requirements listed on their website that's just listed there in black and white so you can see what's needed to get in, and it's less of a guessing game compared to the typical American admissions process. Maggie and I put together some general entry requirements for UCD and UCC to kind of illustrate the differences in requirements, what might be expected of students going into different areas. Obviously, there are a lot of programs, many more than we can highlight here, but just to give you an idea, at UCD and UCC, arts and humanities courses might be a little more accessible for students, maybe requiring an SAT or ACT for some students, but in some cases, you don't even need a test score to get into the arts and humanities courses. At UCD, a 3.2 GPA or an IB score of 24 would be enough to get you in. And then when you move into social sciences, we're looking for a little bit higher SAT or ACT scores, a little bit higher GPA, a higher IB diploma requirement. And then I think you'll see for social sciences, science, and psychology that there can be some additional requirements. You'll need basic entry requirements for GPA and test scores, but then there might be a very specific maths requirement you need to meet, or if you're talking about science and engineering, a lab science requirement, and that could be an AP math or lab science score, or it could be a grade 12 college level math or lab science. So there will be specific requirements related to those. And the last column that we highlighted is psychology, and I think it's important to show that in Ireland, psychology is typically one of the most competitive courses at a university, excluding the clinical courses, which are kind of in their own world of competitiveness and have different requirements. Psychology is an incredibly competitive course with really high entry requirements, really high standards, and very small class sizes. So it's a bit different than applying to psychology at a US institution in a lot of ways. So we highlight that psychology tends to be one of the highest entry requirement courses at both of our institutions because of the kind of small clinical nature of psychology in Ireland. So it is a bit different in Ireland, but Maddie can talk a bit more about Northern Ireland and how that's similar.
Thank you, Jim. So yeah, as Jim mentioned, we are under two different systems, although we are all on the same beautiful island. There are definitely some differences, but I'd say overall, generally speaking, fairly similar. So for Northern Ireland, if you're looking at universities there, we are under the United Kingdom's higher education system. So the way that we evaluate students for admission is a bit different in that we will look for an overall cumulative GPA. Typically, most of our programs, that GPA is going to fall between 3.2 and 3.5. Some programs may have a bit higher. GPA level requirements. So again, very important that you are doing your research on the individual courses or programs that you're interested in applying for ahead of time. In addition to that, in the UK, we will also ask for 3 higher level grades or test scores. That will kind of be program dependent. So sometimes for some programs, it can be any, AP or IB test score, and then perhaps an honors class grade and an ACT test score. Other programs, they may ask for a specific test score. So if you are applying to biology, it's likely that we're going to want to see a AP biology test score, for example, if you took AP bio. So again, just kind of do your research on each course that you're interested in. And if anything is unclear, you can always reach out to myself or the US representative or Canadian representative at the institution that you're looking at. In addition to those grades and test scores, we'll also ask for 1 letter of recommendation. Could we actually go back, Jim? Sorry. Thank you. So we'll ask for 1 letter of recommendation. Typically, this will come from your high school counselor if you do want mention of your academic merit in a specific area. So let's say, again, you're applying for biology, and you want your bio teacher's input on, your merit within that subject discipline itself. Your counselor can definitely kind of quote your teacher from that subject area in their recommendation letter for you. Test flexible admissions for the most part, but again, sometimes some courses will require some form of a test score, typically in a subject specific area. And then we ask for a personal statement. This is a 4,000 character statement, so it is short and sweet as compared to what students might be used to writing for institutions over on this side of the pond. So we will ask you, why are you interested in a course of study? What have you done academically to prepare to be successful at the college level? And then is there anything else outside of your academics that you've done to also prepare you to be successful in that discipline or subject area? So, short and sweet, to the point. And one thing to note, we are on what's called UCAS, and we'll chat a bit more about that later, but your personal statement will be sent out to all of the schools that you're applying to in the UK. So you do want to keep it general, not saying, I want to study biology at Queen's if you're also applying for biology at other schools in the UK as well. Awesome. And we can go to the next slide here. So to dive in a little bit more to those grades or test scores that we want to see from you, students or on the other side of the pond, they take what are called A-level classes, and that's what they're evaluated on for admissions into university. So obviously over here, we don't have that exact match, and each institution will kind of choose, what is comparable to an A-level course-wise and content-wise in the US, Canada, wherever it may be that you're applying from. And so in Queens's case, we would take any AP exam scores, honors class grades, college class grades. So if you're in dual enrollment or early middle college, same for SAT or ACT scores or IB higher level test scores. Those are all things that we would say, okay, that is equivalent to what an A-level grade would be for a local domestic student. So we will take a combination of those 3 things. Every course or program, again, will have different entry requirements, so it's important to do your research. Some may just say we just want a combination of 3 along with a minimum GPA. Others may say we want a minimum GPA, and then we also want to see a higher level math score of, maybe at least a 5 on an AP exam or a 6 on an IB test. So if there's any kind of confusion, again, just reach out to us. We're there to help and kind of make it make sense for you. An example here. So again, they'll ask for 3 A-level grades. For politics at Queen's, we'd ask for ABB. So we would want to see 1 grade or test score from this A column and then 2 from the B column. And if you can make that work, then, you're on the right track to getting an offer with us. So that is all from us on this one. Thank you.
Awesome. So then talking about the application process itself, I think in many ways you'll find it very similar to applying to US or Canadian universities. Applications will open fall of your final year or fall the year before you're looking to attend university. Most applications will close in late May, early June, though I think Irish universities have a lot more flexibility in accepting late applications. So if you get to the summer before term starts, if you're into June, sometimes July, and you have a last minute change of heart, there might be opportunities at Irish universities to accommodate you into some of our courses. So it's definitely worth reaching out, even if you feel a little later in the cycle. Though, of course, we always recommend applying as early as possible so you have as many options as possible. Ireland doesn't have a general application system for all universities, so each institution has their own direct application that you'll fill out to apply to the institutions. There are 4 universities in Ireland that are on the Common App, so if you're applying with the Common App to other institutions or other US schools, then it's very easy. You can just add them on the Common App and apply there. Otherwise, you'll apply directly to the institution. Medicine and dentistry applicants, however, we recommend applying via a partner program called Atlantic Bridge, and they're an organization that helps students from the US and Canada to apply to multiple Irish universities for medicine or for dentistry. And it's a great opportunity to apply for those courses and be able to submit one application to multiple med schools. So that's a good opportunity if you're looking for that. And then most courses are rolling, so we'll do review of applications as they come in, and decisions can come within 4 to 6 weeks. So if you apply in the fall, you may get a decision within a month or two, and then have some time to think about your options and decide what you want to do with that offer. This is a good time to highlight the rules around anyone with an Irish, UK, or EU passport. Ireland typically looks for both residency and citizenship when you're applying to Irish universities to determine if you're eligible for EU fees and the EU application process, or if you're applying as a non-EU student. Typically, if you have citizenship in Europe, you typically have to have lived for 3 of the 5 years before you start a program as your full-time residence in Ireland, the UK, or the EU. So if you just have a citizenship or just a passport and you've never lived in Europe, you probably wouldn't qualify for EU fees. There's also the possibility to qualify if you've done 5 years of primary, secondary education in the EU. So it does depend on where you've lived and how long you've lived there. It's a complicated process. There's lots of rules and nuance to that I haven't mentioned here. So if you have European citizenship and you're curious about qualifying for EU fees, I recommend reaching out to the institution you're looking at studying at as soon as possible so you can do the EU fee assessment and see if you qualify for EU fees or not, because the fee status that you hold, EU or non-EU, determines how you apply. If you have EU citizenship and EU fee status, then you apply through the CAO, which is the application that Irish students would use. And if you're non-EU, apply through the direct process that other Americans would use. So it's a bit complicated, but this is something where it's worth thinking about and reaching out to institutions a little bit early to make sure you understand how these rules apply to you.
So up in Northern Ireland, the application process is a bit different. So again, we're falling under the UK higher education system, and so we're going off of their application timeline and process as well. So for us, our applications are all going to be housed on what is called UCAS. UCAS is an online platform that's very similar to what the Common App is in the US. It's just the UK's version. All of the UK schools are on it, and that is how you submit applications. Applications open up every year in early September. The date will change each year, just kind of depending on what day of the week the date falls on. But outside of that, you are able to apply typically through mid to late January for what's called equal consideration. So that means if you submit an application, the day that they open up or the day before equal consideration deadline comes about, it won't matter. You'll be equally considered either way. And then for any programs that don't fill up after that equal consideration deadline, we'll have open applications typically through the 30th of June. So you do have some time, again, as Jim said, if you have a change of heart later on in your spring semester, maybe want to consider coming over this way. A lot of programs will have those open seats that you can still apply for through the end of June. We always say if you are just interested in applying to one school in the UK, you can apply directly sometimes with those institutions. So for example, Queen's, you can apply directly on our website. If you are applying to more than one school, though, you do need to do your applications via UCAS, and they do cap applications at 5 total. So you have to pick 5 programs that you want to apply for. They could be 5 programs at the same school. They could be the same program at 5 different schools. You can kind of mix and match, but that is the max. So you do need to know going in what your top 5 programs are when you're going to apply. The one caveat to the deadlines that we chatted about above would be our professional programs. So medicine, dentistry, and veterinary science. If you are interested in applying to any of those programs at any institution in the UK, the deadline is hard and it is October 15th on UCAS. So just make sure that you make note of that if you are interested in applying for any of those programs in Northern Ireland. Typically for us, we go on a rolling admissions basis, and usually get an answer back between 3 and 5 weeks from our admissions team. We did chat a little bit about citizenship and fee status in the Republic of Ireland. Sort of a similar process in Northern Ireland as well. So if you are an Irish or a UK passport holder, that may not automatically mean that you will have local fees. You do have to have lived and paid taxes full time in the UK for the last 3 years at the time of application submission in order to qualify for that fee status. Now, the nice thing is, if you are an Irish or a UK passport holder and have that citizenship, you will not have to get a student visa. So in Northern Ireland, you would be required to get a UK student visa to come over and study with us. But if you are a passport holder for either Ireland or the UK, you are exempt from that. So that will save you a couple $100s, which is always nice. If you have more questions about UCAS and how to use it, you can scan that QR code there. It's a bit more counselor based, but it also is helpful for students who are kind of trying to figure out how to navigate it too. So feel free to use that as a resource.
Wonderful. Thanks, Maddie. And if you didn't get the chance to scan the QR code, we are going to send the presentation around later this week and the slides that we've put together, so you'll have this information available to you later. So we put together some frequently asked questions that students and families typically have when they're thinking about applying to Ireland. We will have our Q&A session later to answer anything that's not here, but we thought we'd cover some of the basic questions that usually come up that are pretty frequent when we're looking at this. One of the questions that's becoming far more common as more and more students are doing dual enrollment credits during their high school time is whether dual enrollment credits are considered and how they're considered in the application process. This is different at each institution, but generally dual enrollment credits will sometimes be considered for admissions or for scholarship consideration, so as part of your application. Sometimes dual enrollment credits can be used in place of, say, AP scores or requirements for ACT or SAT. So it can be a big benefit, especially if you have up to a year or two of community college, or if you've done an associate's degree, that can all be considered. The difficult part for dual enrollment in any previous university work is that transferring credit from North America to Ireland can be very difficult. Part of that's because we don't have general education courses. So if you did a bunch of gen eds at a local community college, there's really not anything for them to transfer into because there's no corollary requirements at Irish universities. You may be able to transfer some of your credit, but that can be a difficult part of the process. Related to that, are AP scores required for some, but not all courses at some institutions. So there are opportunities if you're at a school that doesn't offer AP courses or if you haven't been able to take any through your high school time, there can be courses that are available to you without taking AP scores. And then some institutions will accept other things in place of AP scores. Like I said, college credits can work, other exams, high ACT or SAT scores, or even college level courses, the more competitive honors level courses at your high school can be considered as well. And then do supporting materials need to be received by the deadline? So each institution sets their own deadlines for applying to courses. Generally, there's a little bit of flexibility because we can take your application and receive your test scores or your transcripts maybe a little bit later. It'll depend on the institution. That's definitely something to reach out to institutions to clarify what they need and when they need it by before you start the application process. Something that comes up pretty regularly is sometimes a student will get a conditional offer, and there's a bit of confusion around what that means. In many cases where a student maybe meets some but not all of the requirements, or they're in the middle of coursework and haven't received final grades or final scores, you might get a conditional offer to a course. Typically, it'll say you have an offer conditional on meeting specific requirements. So that could be getting a 3 in AP Calc, or ending your high school career with a 3.5 GPA, or, finishing a certain class and getting a certain grade. It's usually spelled out very explicitly in your offer letter what the conditions are of meeting that offer condition, what you need to do to get into the university, but they usually are pretty firm conditions. So it's something worth understanding, reading through thoroughly, talking with the admissions rep if you get a conditional offer about what that means and what your opportunities would be if you don't meet those conditions or if things change. So it's definitely something to talk more about and have that conversation with the university if you do get a conditional offer. But it's not something to be afraid of or something unusual. It's very common to issue conditional offers to a lot of students, especially if you're still in high school. And then a very common basic question is, do you need to know what you need to study? And it is very different than a lot of North American institutions because usually you do because you apply to a specific course as opposed to applying to the university in general. So you need to apply to a major, you need to pick a course that you want to apply into. Some institutions do have a bit of flexibility and will be able to, maybe help you switch around between programs in the College of Science or in the arts and humanities areas. But there's usually a lot less flexibility once you start a program to be able to switch around or transfer into different majors. So you usually have to have a good idea of where you want to go and what you want to do before you start the application process. And then one of the common questions is whether there are foreign language requirements, and generally there are not. We don't require any specific foreign language credits or years of a foreign language unless you want to study a language at university. Then we generally expect that you have strong foundations in a language or the language you want to study, like you've taken a lot of French classes if you want to study French. But unless you're studying one of those languages, we don't need any specific language. And just to clarify, knowledge of the Irish language is not required. It's certainly welcome, but it's a difficult language for Americans and Canadians to learn. So it's something that we'd appreciate if you have, but something you can pick up while you're there, here and there, while you're in Ireland. And there's a lot more questions beyond this. We'll answer some more later, and there'll be a lot more questions that come up right after the webinar ends and as you start your application. But there are 7 Irish universities that have full-time regional reps, just like myself and Maddie and Maggie, that are based in North America, that are here to answer your questions, that have local phone numbers that you can pick up and call. So there's a lot of great resources for you. We partner with an organization called ERNA, that's a group of regional reps like us. And the contact information for all the regional reps that work with students from North America is listed there. So you'll be able to get in touch with us and we can help answer a lot of the questions that you'll have.
Thank you, Jim. So now we will chat about the fun part, which is money and cost. So I know that that's something that's kind of a burning question for most folks when they're thinking about university. And I think a very common misconception about studying internationally is if I'm going internationally, it's probably a lot more expensive than if I were to study domestically here in the States or in Canada, or wherever you may be tuning in from. However, typically that's not the case. Sometimes it can even be, on par or cheaper than options that you're looking for at home, which is great. So the average cost of one academic year, and that would include tuition as well as your living expenses, is anywhere from 40 to 50,000 US or 55 to 70,000 Canadian. So pretty affordable. These are going to be typically for all of our non-medical programs. Medicine programs will be a bit more in cost, so closer to 80,000 US or 150,000 Canadian per year. But again, every school is going to be a little bit different. I think that's a big theme throughout the night. So doing your research and going to those individual institutional websites is really important. And tuition and living costs definitely will vary too, depending on, are you in a bigger city? Are you in a smaller kind of college town? All kind of things to keep in mind as you are budgeting out for your future education endeavors. One thing that is good news is that you are able to work part-time while you are over there. So you can work up to 20 hours per week during term, so when class is in session, and up to 40 hours a week during longer breaks, so winter break or summer break when class is not actively happening. This is true for the Republic of Ireland as well as in Northern Ireland. So it's a great opportunity for you to, maybe get an on-campus job or work out in the community as well, and kind of integrate into the city that you're now calling home, if that's an option for you. And even, a lot of our students will do kind of short-term, full-time paid internships on their summer breaks where they can make good money and also kind of build up your network and your experience within the field that you are studying, to build a career in one day. Additionally, students will help fund their studies with scholarships. So most of our universities do offer partial tuition scholarships that are based on academic merit. And some might also offer some more substantial awards that do require separate applications. One thing to note is that we're all on our own timelines for those scholarship awards. Some scholarships at the same school might have different timelines too. So it's important to do your research early on in the fall, to see, which awards that you qualify for, when their applications open up, and when their due dates are, just so that you can kind of maximize your opportunity for getting scholarships at each institution that you're interested in. The other way that a lot of students will help fund their studies coming from the US would be through FAFSA. So most of our institutions do accept FAFSA loans, even though we are not US schools. So we have a number, just like schools here in the States do, that you can plug in and get a FAFSA award package. And typically we all have, FAFSA officers on site as well at schools to help process those awards and then act as counsel for you throughout your time there with financial aid. The one thing we can't take from FAFSA award packages would be grants. So if you were to be a Pell Grant recipient, for example, unfortunately, you can't use that at an international institution. It does have to stay on US soil. Yeah, those are typically the ways that our students will kind of funnel in funding for their experience with us. Living in Ireland, so this is the fun part. It is a unique and vibrant experience for our students. Cost of living is very affordable, especially compared to over here in North America right now. Again, it will depend on where you're living. If you want to have an apartment in city center in Dublin, you might want to start saving as early as possible. And same for if you want to live in a smaller area out a little bit on the outskirts of town of where you're studying, it might be a little bit more affordable, but it's something to kind of keep in mind and budget for ahead of time. But we say typically around 1,500 US, 2,200 Canadian per month should more than cover rent, food, travel, and entertainment for you while you're there. Housing, we do have accommodation at all of our institutions. They are built for student living, so it's a space for you to go have quiet time, rest, study, but also there are a lot of social opportunities that are built into our residents' life experiences as well at our institutions. And housing is guaranteed for first-year international students. So for that first year, you will absolutely have a place to land as soon as you get to Ireland, which is super nice. It's not always the case in other regions around the world. So we think that's a great benefit of coming to study with us. The food in Ireland is wonderful. There definitely is that emphasis on locally sourced produce, meat, and dairy. So what you're eating is super fresh. And it's, from sometimes even just a few miles or kilometers away, which I think is great and really lends to the country's effort toward being more sustainable. I think Ireland is a leader on the world stage in terms of sustainability, and our institutions also follow suit with that. So many of our campuses are now plastic free completely, and we're also working to implement other measures to ensure the health of our communities as well as our larger planet for generations to come. In terms of getting around the island of Ireland, very accessible. So you can travel via bus or rail between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. It's super easy. I say it's like crossing state lines in the US. So not a big deal at all. And you're also very well connected to Europe and other destinations around the world. So we have plenty of airports in Dublin, Shannon, Cork, and Belfast. So you're never more than a couple hours at max away from an airport if you want to go explore on the weekend or on your breaks. So student life, lots to do. You will not be bored. I think it's very similar to what you might experience at a university here in North America. There are lots of options to get involved with different clubs or societies. So sports are huge in Ireland to get involved with. You can get involved anywhere from walk-on intramural sports teams or clubs all the way up to competitive teams and clubs that will travel and play other institutions. It's not going to be NCAA standards, so that level of competitiveness, but you still have those opportunities to compete and travel, which I think is very fun, and it's always fun hosting other teams on campus as well for matches or events. Societies will be kind of everything outside of sports. So they can be academic, hobby-based, interest-based, religious-based, whatever you think of. There's probably a group or a society on our campus to join for that kind of interest of yours. And if there's not, it's very easy to create one yourself. So lots to get involved with right off the bat. And I think our campuses do a great job at promoting those right as soon as you get to school as well, so that you can kind of build those social circles right away for yourself. If you are interested in contributing and giving back to your institution, you can make your voice heard by also running for a position on our student government teams or students' unions. It's a great way to continue to be involved with the university and really make changes at ground levels. And then again, I kind of mentioned in the last slide, but it's very easy and it's very affordable to get out and explore other parts of Europe or the UK as well during your time on the island of Ireland. So take advantage of those longer weekends and breaks that you get. A lot of our students do, and go have some fun adventures while you're at it. So student supports on campus, we definitely want to make sure that, you're successful academically in the classroom, but we also take a holistic approach at supporting our students in Ireland, so that you are doing well in all areas of your life. So these are just a few support systems that we have in place on our campuses for you. So to start, every school will have a global office. We are all technically part of those global offices as well, but there are teams who are on the ground on campus all the time, in a physical global office for you too once you get there. But we are here, right now to help you kind of answer any questions you might have about programs or the institution or the application process, all the way through to, you get your offer, you choose to accept it, and now we'll kind of help you on board, if you will, over to campus as well. And then when you get there, that team is also there on campus for you throughout your time studying with us. Other areas, academic and peer advisors. So we have networks of peer supports throughout all of our universities that are there for you. Some might be more social, others might be academic in focus. So like a mentor or a tutor available to you, especially in your first year, who's someone that's an older student in your program, perhaps, who's kind of walked the walk and done it and knows where you're at as a first year. So they're a great person to kind of access, or a great group to access. And then we'll also all have, of course, academic advisors as well for program related questions and to kind of help you navigate your program, as well as figure out what your next steps are after graduation when you get to that point. Our schools all offer skills labs as well. So these will be physical labs and spaces where students can go to receive extra guidance. So if you're struggling with academic writing in Ireland versus what you were used to in the US or Canada, this is a great resource to take advantage of. Same with maths, as well as time management and more. We also offer disability supports, just like here in the US and Canada. So we will have dedicated offices and representatives. We want to make sure that you know that it is vital to self-identify. If you need any kind of academic support or support outside of the classroom during your time with us, definitely let us know as early as possible so that we can meet with you and make sure that your unique needs can be met while you're over and studying with us. Other health and wellness resources will include campus health centers as well as mental health counseling. And we offer a bunch of other resources as well to ensure well-being. So like student recreation centers and well-being or quiet or prayer rooms. Those are all things that our campuses will offer to you as a student. Finally, I know you're going to school to study and learn, but typically the end goal is then to graduate and go into a career. So we do have career services offices as well on campus. Some will be broad career service offices. Different schools within a university will have their own, and sometimes even specific programs will have their own really niche career services offices. But all of these offices and representatives will be there to help you with any questions you have about employment, employability going forward. We hold, semesterly job fairs where we are bringing in industry representatives for you to get face time with, perhaps interviews and things like that for part-time internships, and then, of course, full-time employment when that time comes. We'll also offer resume workshops and mock interviews for you to practice and prepare for life after university. So those are just a few of our supports that we love to highlight. Again, we just want to make sure that you have support from all directions during your time with us.
And to wrap us up, we hope you get take the opportunity and have the opportunity to learn more about our institutions. There's a lot of great virtual resources available if you're looking to learn more about it, and we've highlighted some high-level overviews, but if you're looking to get, an in-depth view of individual institutions in Ireland, there's a lot of great virtual resources and videos and great ways to connect with students online. If you do get the chance to visit, I know it's a bit further than maybe your local state school, but if you get the opportunity to come to Ireland, if your family travels take you there, or if you're visiting for another reason, most of our institutions will be super happy to bring you into campus to give you a tour and show you about, and you can learn more about the institution and the courses you're looking for when you're there in person. And if you are very targeted in what you're doing and have the opportunity to come visit Ireland for something very specific, every institution runs a campus open day, like an open house where you can come and get a full in-depth experience in Ireland along with a ton of other prospective future students. So those are all advertised on all of our individual campus websites, and we'll be able to highlight those to you. UCD's is this Saturday. If you want to jump on a plane soon, you can be there in time. There's still the opportunity, but if that's too soon, maybe next year in the future. So there's a lot of great ways to continue to connect with us, make sure you have the opportunity to make sure you're in the right place for you. So thanks very much to everyone for spending your evening with us and spending some time learning about Ireland. We're very happy that you're here and learning about the opportunities that Ireland can offer you for your university studies. We do have a ton of excellent questions in the chat, so I'm going to stop the screen share so we can all see each other a little bit better, and we can jump into some of these questions that have been here for a bit. So we have a few admissions related questions right at the top. One is about what GPA is looked at, and if, it's just GPA focused, or if institutions are looking for very specific grades, or if some, A's, B's, C's, how that might affect an application. I would say generally Irish institutions are looking for unweighted GPA, and if students have weighted GPA at their institution, we will recalculate to be a unweighted GPA, but that we look at all, or at least most institutions will look at all academics. So an ACT or an SAT or AP scores can balance out, GPAs or vice versa. So not one thing wouldn't necessarily be disqualifying, but we'd look for a balance of strong academics for the course a student is applying to. And then we have another one about how it works if a student wants to change the major they indicated when applying, once they've enrolled or once they're in their program. Maggie, do you want to talk about changing majors in Irish institutions?
Sure. So it can be possible if you let us know very early on. So for example, if a student would apply into a particular program and then start classes in the fall and in the first couple of weeks decide that it's not for them, based on availability or seats still available in their chosen alternate program, we may be able to put them into that program just based on the availability. So it's evaluated on a case by case basis. Because our programs are, fairly streamlined and we don't have gen ed requirements, if students want to switch courses or switch programs, into after their, first couple of weeks or, after the first year, you would likely have to start over. So we wouldn't, tell you to leave the university. We'd obviously welcome you to start that new program, but just depending on what it is, there likely wouldn't be too much crossover. So it's possible, but just not on the level that I think at North American institutions is possible here.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. And then another question on whether Irish universities accept AP credits. So generally we would use AP scores for admission, but we wouldn't award college credit for AP scores like you might see at a US institution. So it's a bit different than you might see at US or other universities.
Yep. I would say the same up in Northern Ireland as well under the UK higher education system. I think we touched on it in the presentation as well, but because we don't really do general education classes, typically if you do get that passing AP test score, you won't necessarily get to test out or transfer credit in either, unfortunately, but it is very important for admissions.
Mm-hmm. We have two related questions about applying early. So is there a benefit to applying early? And if you apply early, do you get an admissions decision earlier?
I mean, potentially, yeah. So, many of our universities use a rolling admission process. So, if you're applying earlier on in the process, those seats are allocated on a first come, first served basis. So, if you'd like to get a decision a little bit quicker, you're more than welcome to apply earlier. And some programs, just kind of depending on what they are, may have very limited seats available. So, if you are applying to something that does tend to be pretty competitive, like those psychology programs that we were mentioning earlier that have pretty high entry and limited spaces for international students, then we would definitely recommend applying a little bit earlier in the cycle, just to give yourself the best chance of being allocated one of those seats on the program.
Mhm. Yeah, we'd be very similar. UCD is a rolling application, and we process applications in the order they're received. So the earlier you apply, the earlier you get a decision. We do have a priority deadline for North Americans for most UG courses of December 1st to be eligible for most of our programs and our scholarships. But that's definitely something where you have to check in with each institution to see what their recommended deadline is and if that's different for different kinds of courses.
Very similar at Queens as well. And I always say, I think it's helpful to apply earlier if you're able to, just to give yourself a bit more time for planning and mental preparation. Once you do receive that offer back, it's always helpful just to know, especially with such a big move going internationally.
Hmm. Yeah. There's a question about in general what scholarships are available to apply for. This is another frustrating answer that it depends. So there's really, a huge variance across universities. I've generally seen at most Irish institutions that there will be a number of maybe smaller merit-based awards where students can get something like 10, 20, 30% of tuition and fees covered for strong academics or going into certain programs or maybe being from a certain region. So there are a number of those smaller awards that might be available to most students or they're, more accessible to a lot of students. And then a lot of institutions will have some larger, highly competitive merit-based scholarships that offer larger awards. We're talking like 50% of tuition or, something like that. I think it's very rare to see anything like a full ride where your tuition and your living costs are covered. And it's also very rare to see need-based scholarships when you're looking abroad at Ireland and in other countries. It's far more common to see merit-based scholarships as opposed to need-based scholarships. Um, When do we need to accept admissions offers in Ireland and the UK? So another variable answer. It varies by university, so we don't know everyone. UCD typically issues decision deadlines of May 1st, kind of in line with most US institutions for students that apply in the fall.
That would be the same for UCC as well.
With us, UCAS, you will get all of your offers back by May 13th at the very latest. From all schools in the UK, that's their required deadline. Most schools, I'll say, get back to you a lot earlier than that. Most schools are on that rolling admissions kind of scheme as well. So typically you'll hear within a few weeks of submitting your application. But we do ask that you respond by early June, mid-June, at the very latest with your firm and insurance choices.
Awesome. And then we got a question about transferring from, say, a US institution into an Irish institution and whether we'd look at transfer students or if it's possible to do that. Take a stab.
Yeah, we certainly would welcome students with prior learning experience. Your applications for transfer in terms of which credits will be counted for particular classes at UCC, UCD, and others. It would be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So I can't speak specifically for architecture, like the person who asked the question referenced. However, it's potentially possible, just depends on the school and the program. Although I would say, again, just because we don't have general education requirements, I wouldn't expect to receive full credit for what you're looking to transfer over, but you will likely receive some credit at the very least.
Under the UK system, it's a little bit trickier for sure. So we always say, again, case by case basis, so similar there. But we'd say just apply directly with the institution you're interested in and give them, all of the classes you've taken and grades you've received up to this point in time. And then the department themselves will do the evaluation. Typically, though, not always super transfer friendly, but it can, again, help for your case with admissions. Typically, the more transfer friendly programs are going to be on the humanities end of things versus STEM programs. But again, case by case.
Yeah. And that's where degree length also matters as well. With 3-year degrees available in both countries in many areas, there are good opportunities for transferring and still graduating in the same amount of time. If you did a year at a community college or a local university and you transfer into architecture at UCD as a 3-year degree, you could still graduate in 4 years. So you'll still be on kind of the same trajectory and pathway, regardless of whatever transfer credit might work out or not. So there are opportunities to make it work for students if you want to still stay within that 4-year graduation timeframe. Um, and then we got a question about internships and employment in Ireland. Do non-EU citizens have difficulty getting work either during or after their studies in Ireland, and what employment recruitment through career services looks like, and whether students stay or come back to the US or what their options are? Um, I think we looked at this recently for some of our graduates, and it seemed a few years after graduation, it was split nearly 50-50 for students staying in Ireland versus coming back home. And a lot of that just depends on personal preference. Some students fall in love with an Irish person and stay forever, and some students want to be closer to family and move back home. Some get a great job and then transfer back to the US branch of that company. So I mean, there's tons of opportunities across the different countries, and I think there's great options for exploring Ireland, spending great time there, doing your stay back work visa and being able to start work there, and then, continuing your career back home or continuing your studies in Irish universities. So it can take you in so many different pathways.
Mhm. And when it comes to kind of recruitment or finding jobs, as Maddie mentioned earlier on, all of our campuses would have really comprehensive career services centers that, would have kind of like job and graduate employment fairs, but also, work to help potentially place students in internships and work placements, things like that, or, kind of coach on off-campus jobs even. So there are a lot of opportunities, but students, of course, can find their own opportunities through LinkedIn or other external sources. So we definitely offer the tools that students can utilize to start that process, but it's really up to the individual student to make it what they want. And like Jim said, our students have done a little bit of everything, and it purely depends on personal circumstances and motivation.
Mhm. Great. A couple financial questions about whether we accept 529 plans and VA benefits, GI Bill benefits, and things like that. I'd say the 529 plan depends mostly on the plan provider, which 529 plan you use, but we've seen many families and students use 529 plans for their educational expenses with Irish universities. Sometimes it just varies on how they'll cover expenses, whether they'll send money directly to the institution or reimburse families for expenses they pay themselves. So it's worth checking in with the plan that you have, but in most cases it works, and especially most of the Irish universities accept US federal aid and are able to disperse loans and certified by the federal government. So most 529 plan providers will accept that as being equivalent to doing an education or doing a degree in the US. And then VA benefits is a bit more complicated. Many universities do accept them, but the VA administration can take a while to approve new programs. It can be a bit complicated if you're entering into a new course. So the VA benefits are accepted at many institutions, but that's certainly something to look into earlier because it can take the VA 3 to 6 months to approve new programs for students that are going into a course that's never been studied before. So there can be a bit of a delay in receiving those benefits because of how backed up the VA is with approvals. Great. We got another question about credit transfer for IB classes. That'd be similar to APs where we will accept them for admissions, but you typically wouldn't get course credit for IB classes. And then application fees for colleges. Anyone want
And
Our,
with
our
UCAS, oh, sorry, Maggie. Go ahead.
Oh, and I was just going to say ours is about 50 euro. I would say that would be, you'd see around that
yeah.
around the rest of the Republic of Ireland as well. Jim, yes, no?
Yeah, it'd be similar.
Yeah.
UC's is a bit more. We're about 70 euro, so it does depend, but it's somewhere in the 50-ish euro, 50, 70 euro range, depending on the school.
If you're
UCAS is
submitting UCAS applications, it's just a flat rate of about 30 US dollars for up to 5 applications to schools in the UK.
okay. Amazing. Um, let's see. We got a couple more minutes to answer these last few questions that are here. A question about American scholarships that might transfer to Ireland or whether they can use American scholarships in Ireland. Anyone have experience with that? Mm.
I think
We've had
theoretically it's
students,
possible.
yeah,
Yeah.
we've had students get scholarships from a local Rotary Club or, um, a local nonprofit organization or something. As long as the organization will allow the scholarships to be used at international institutions, and they can send a check or wire funds or something, we can accept it. So it's usually up to the organization sponsoring the scholarship, but usually it's fine as long as there's no terms and conditions in the scholarship that says it has to be used at a certain institution or a certain state or something like that, then it's usually fine as long as they can get the funds to us somehow. Let's see. And then for average costs, we listed 40 to 50,000 as the average cost. What's the breakdown for tuition versus living expenses?
I would say I typically counsel students to budget around 12 to $15,000 to account for living expenses. That it just kind of depends on what your lifestyle is. So I can't speak to what the different tuition rates are for every single university, but I think that kind of 12 to 15 is pretty reasonable for around the island.
Mhm. Yeah, that's pretty similar. And tuition will be different for each course as well, which is a bit of a difference compared to many US schools where tuition might just be one tuition for all students. There's typically differential tuition for arts and humanities degrees compared to STEM degrees at most institutions abroad. So that's a bit of a difference as well. So we're getting just to time. I think we'll wrap it up there. I think we got to most questions. If I'm getting through, there's anything else we need to cover, but I think we got a lot of wonderful questions, and I know a lot more will come up. And as you're exploring opportunities in Ireland and thinking about your options coming over to Ireland for your degree, many more questions will come up, and that's what we're here for. We will be in touch with everyone that attended very soon to send out the slides and the recording, and you can always reach out if you have more questions or want to connect with us and learn more about the Emerald Isle. So thanks very much
Mhm.
for joining us, everyone. Pleasure to have you here. Have a great rest of
Thank
your
you
night.
so much. Enjoy your evening
Thank-
all.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.